The technology is not the bottleneck. It's the organizational culture, especially the leadership and how they approach, how they think, how they lay out the framework. That's the bottleneck. Lately, there is actually enormous top-down push for organizations to adopt AI to become more efficient. That's not supported, aligned, or enabled through proper mindset, culture, education, training, and framework. It's typically fragmented, again, siloed. AI is looked as novelty. There is typically an agenda and not a clear vision on how AI can transform. People getting into the execution mode, sometimes feeling like they will miss the boat if they don't do something now without actually thinking through and say, what do I need from organizational culture perspective? What do I need? Governance perspective? Am I even ready to start AI journey? The preparedness is such a big deal. And I've seen organizations simply just get into the execution and fail miserably.
I keep seeing people talk about AI readiness and they frame it as like tooling. But the first crack is usually decision design. Who can ship? Who can approve? Who absorbs the blame when it goes wrong? And a lot of times that's because the CTO has all the decision-making power. Every decision has to go through them. So when you were operating as a CTO in regulated environments, what was the first place the speed versus safety tension showed up in a way leaders could not ignore?
CTO responsibility itself is not clearly laid out. Sometimes CTOs end up becoming responsible for compliance and regulation, including release management, and so many components that, personally speaking, they should not be responsible for. Answering your question, an example that I can share with you was I was responsible for a big rollout of ERP that we were building. And we've learned, of course, that we need to all of a sudden be PCI compliant. Speed versus safety, right there. It was a very interesting exercise to go through to really understand what it means to be PCI compliant. Why does that matter? And how do we ensure that compliance? What's the scope? What's out of the scope? And of course, the CTO becomes responsible, but personally thinking the CISO, security teams, legal teams, it's a collaborative effort on really understanding what it means to be PCI compliant. But sometimes, again, it's thrown on CTOs to make us compliant. It's your responsibility now. And that's not fair.
So what did leadership think the control was and what was actually controlling the outcomes?
I think, of course, when compliance kicks in, there's a little bit of a panic that sets in. And the outcome typically is, hey, we need to be compliant, but we also need to move quickly and with speed, as you rightly said. That typically becomes the controlling pain. And then it goes to, okay, who's responsible for getting this out? And let's see if we can make that person responsible for both compliance as well as speed. It's not one person trying to accomplish everything. Do we have a legal framework and its compliance understanding framework? Who needs to be in that decision framework to say, this is what we need to do to be compliant, and this is why we need to be compliant? Do we really understand the scope and say, this is what it takes to be compliant, and then say, all right, if for us to get there effectively, this is the path to go down. The result is actually expensive. I've lived this time and again. And once you push through that, the result is often expensive because you're now dealing with something in production and everything, is expensive once you get to that point. As opposed to doing it the right way, people, I know, skip that, but that's what's going to cost you time and money, in a big way.
When my very first CTO job, I worked for some very non-technical leaders. The CEO is very forward thinking, but he knew nothing about technology. And they pushed me down a road where I became the roadblock. I was the one who was constantly having to make the decisions. And so I quickly learned that wasn't going to work for both me personally and for the business. So we often hear enterprises, they think that they're ready for AI, but they're actually not. Why is that gap dangerous?
It's dangerous because AI does two things. It amplifies your good if done right. It amplifies your bad if done wrong. It's that simple. So if it's not done right, and the consequence could be disastrous. And without understanding the risk associated with deploying AI without proper framework and readiness, you run those risks. That's why it's super dangerous to just jump into it and do it and then think about, oh, what do I need to do to make sure that we have the right guardrails. That I'm telling you, we've seen the time and again. That's not good.
So if you had to name one missing capability, data governance, security posture, or accountability, which one usually breaks first?
Oh, in my opinion, accountability breaks first because it's not clearly laid out. That's why it breaks first. Right now, as I always say, technology is not the bottleneck. It's the clarity, it's the people, it's the culture, it's the mindset. And accountability breaks just because, again, there's no clarity on accountability, typically.